Hello everyone, welcome to another Python beginner tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a simple age calculator and age verification that runs in a browser. It works like this. When the page is loaded, a dialog box appears and asks you for your date of birth. You can input your birthday and it calculates your age. If you're over 18, it shows the restricted content. And if you are under 18, it won't show the content. If you find this subject interesting, please like and subscribe. Now let's get started. The first step is to set up the project to run Python. I've talked about how to do this in my previous videos, and I'm going to use the same setup. If you're new here, make sure you watch the video in the link first. Now we have set up the project. We can write our Python code. I'm using the Open with Live Server feature in VS Code to preview the page, so we can see the code and live preview side by side. In my app.py file, I first import some dependencies. The first is the browser module from Python. It lets us access the DOM elements and manipulate HTML. The second one lets us build a dialog box. The last one is from the standard datetime module, so we can access methods related to dates. Remember, in our setup, we have a div in the HTML body with ID called container. So I'm going to select this div and assign it to a variable called container. This is where we are going to show the restricted web content after we verify the user's age. Next, we will create the age-restricted content. For demonstration, it will just be some text. Then, I'm going to make the dialog box using the dialog function and assign it to D. The first argument of the dialog function is the text on the title bar of the panel, and the OK cancel is set to true when you want an OK button and a cancel button. Now we have an empty dialog box. We want to add the user input. I create an input element using html.input and set the type to date. I also create a label element using html.label and set the label text to enter your birthday. Then I add these two elements to the dialog panel using the smaller or equal sign. In the preview, we can see the elements are showing up correctly, and you can input a date. However, right now the OK button still doesn't work. So I'm going to bind the OK button to a function called calculateAge. Before we can use the event binding, we need to first define the calculateAge function. The function takes the click event as the argument. To write the function, we need to consider a few scenarios. What if the user clicks OK without providing an input? What if the user types an invalid date? In the first case, we can say if input.value is empty, we do nothing. If the input is not empty, we need to know what kind of value we're getting from the input. To do this, you can print the input.value to the console. Then right-click on the browser and select Inspect, where you can access the console. After selecting a date, you can see the value printed is a string representation of the date. Now I'm going to test whether the input date is a valid date. In reality, if an age submitted that is too young or too old, it is probably not real. But here, I'm only going to check whether the date is a future date to keep it simple. I create a variable called birth and convert the input string to datetime format. The second input is a format string that matches the input value, where capitalized Y means the year has 4 digits, and lowercase m and d means the month and date have 2 digits. I then get the current time using the datetime.now method. If birth is greater than now, we want to show a warning message on the dialog panel. To avoid adding multiples of the same message, we need to first check if an element called warning is already in the document. If not, we can add it to the dialog panel. We assume as long as the date of birth is before now, it is a valid date. To calculate the age accurately, we also need to consider the month and date. If the user has not had a birthday this year, the month and the date of birth will be bigger than now.month and now.day, so the age will be now.year minus birth.year minus 1. If the user has already had a birthday, the age will be now.year minus birth.year. Next, we will verify whether the user is old enough to see the restricted content. If the user is younger than 18, we will show the user's age and a message saying the content is not available. If the user is 18 or older, we will show the age and add the content to the page. I then use d.close to close the dialog. Now I can test the calculator to make sure it functions correctly. I can see if the entered age is 18 or older. The restricted content is showing up. When the age is under 18, the content is not showing. If you're following along, you may notice that the text on my page looks different than yours. It is because I modified the CSS to make the text larger and centered. CSS is not the focus of the video, but I encourage you to play with it and improve the code, because practice makes perfect. I hope you learned something new. Thanks for watching and see you next time.